Grandpa Wolf and Wolfie walked to school together every day. There was a nice paved path for them to walk on with all the other animals, but it was crowded. Wolfie was always looking for interesting shortcuts. On Monday, Wolfie said, "Grandpa, let's go through the grapevine." That day he came to school with big purple stains all over his fur. And that night, Grandpa had to wash him in the big bath before bedtime. On Tuesday, Wolfie said, "Let's go through the pond." That day he came to school all wet and shiny, and that night Grandpa went to bed with a sniffly nose. On Wednesday, Wolfie said, "Let's go through the dandelions." That day he came to school looking like, well, a dandelion. At night, Grandpa laughed. "Oh, you look like a porcupine." On Thursday, Wolfie said, "Let's go through the woods." And Grandpa said, "No." And all the way on the nice paved path to school, Wolfie said, "But why? Why? Why can't I go through the woods, Grandpa?" That night, when Wolfie was all tucked in bed, Grandpa told Wolfie a story. It was such a scary story, so awful, that from that day on, Wolfie would not go to sleep unless Grandpa told him the story again. About how listening to Grandpa's story too? Would you like that? When I was not much older than you, my mother. My great-grandmother, said Wolfie, and sat up in bed. Yes, lie down, your great-grandmother. My dear mother, Wolfiette, used to send me every day to visit my own grandpa, who lived in a little green hut with a yellow roof at the very edge of the woods. Once she sent me with a great shiny apple for Grandpa. Once I carried him a tail full of sausages. Once I carried a jug full of honey for my grandpa. But once I helped Mother Wolfiette pack a basket with crumble pie and raspberries and a great big bottle of apple juice. And I ran off to the woods. I didn't want Grandpa to wait for me. But when I got there, I realized I had left my grandpa's basket at home. I was in a hurry, so I decided to take a shortcut back home. And that's when things started to go wrong. I strayed off the path I knew so well, and suddenly I was surrounded by people. People? Wolfie was so excited. He threw off his blanket and sat up in bed. The kind that are big or the little kind? The little kind, said Grandpa. And if you want to hear the story, you have to lie down and close your eyes now. And Grandpa waited silently until Wolfie finally lay back down in bed. He tucked him in his blanket. He stroked Wolfie's soft ears. "Did you brush your teeth?" Grandpa asked. "Grandpa, I want to hear the story," said Wolfie, and almost sat back up in bed again. Okay. It was a great big pack of little people right there on the path where I was walking, and they were all screaming, "Wolf! Wolf! Wolf! Wolf!" It sounded as though they were barking at me. I stood there and started trembling. Oh, how can I possibly get back home? And Grandpa would be so worried. My ears were trembling the hardest. Suddenly, one of the little people started laughing. "Oh, what big ears you have," it said, and all the others laughed as well. It looked around. I felt so bad to hear them laughing at me. "But I love your big ears, Grandpa," said Wolfie. "You can hear me better with them." "You're right," said Grandpa. "I love to listen to you." "Go on telling me the story," said Wolfie. I could feel my eyes widening with fear, said Grandpa. And then I heard more laughter. Oh, chirped in another little person. "What big eyes you have," it said. "But I love your big eyes, Grandpa," said Wolfie. "You can see me better with them." "You're right," said Grandpa. "I'd love to look at you." "Go on telling me the whole story," said Wolfie. I tried to join in with the laughter, said Grandpa, and then a tiny little person shouted for all the woods to hear, "What big teeth you have!" Oh, they all laughed. "You should have bit them, Grandpa." Wolfie was so upset he pulled the pillow over his head. "Well, I didn't," said Grandpa. "So what did you do?" asked Wolfie. "Well, I ran off." Would you like to know what happened to Grandpa when he ran off? How about it? I ran and ran, and all the little pieces' voices had disappeared. I heard one. It was a little girl's voice. "Where are you going?" I said. "To my grandmom's house." "Right at the edge of the forest," she said. "That's where my grandpa lives," I thought. "I only have to follow her and I won't get lost again." And so I did. I followed her right to the edge of the forest. And there they were, 2 little green huts with the red windowsills and yellow roof. But then an awful thing happened. It was so late and so dark, each of us walked right into the wrong hut. Oh, Wolfie, it was just awful. Instead of my grandpa, I found an old woman in the bedroom, and she started screaming, "Wolf!" I ran out of the hut only to see the little girl who was rushing out of the other hut, screaming, "Wolf! Wolf!" I guess she meant my dear old grandpa. "What did the little girl look like?" asked Wolfie. "It was a long time ago," Grandpa said. "Oh, but I do remember one thing. She had a red riding hood on her head." Wolfie started laughing. He laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. "I know who she is," said Wolfie. "There's an old lady near school who always tells everyone that her name is Old Red Riding Hood, and that once upon a time when she was called Little Red Riding Hood, she found a wolf in her grandma's bed." "So that was your grandpa?" "It wasn't her grandma's bed. It was just in the wrong house." "What a funny misunderstanding. You and she should meet, Grandpa. Old Red Riding Hood is really a nice old lady." Wolfie was very excited. It took him a long time to finally fall asleep. And when he did, he dreamed of marvelous shortcuts to school and of marvelous misunderstandings. That are all the stuff stories.